As I said yesterday, reading Paul, and especially his letter to the Romans, can be a little tricky because it is possible to quote a brief snippet of his argument and come away with a false conclusion about what he's really trying to say. In the early chapters of Romans, Paul is trying to establish the necessity for God's grace in rescuing us from sin. How he gets there is somewhat convoluted. But what we have seen so far is that the wrath of God is real, and that even non-believers are subject to God's wrath because there is enough evidence of God and of God's ways in nature to at least point people in the right direction. We've seen that one of the ways God deals with sin is to, quote, give us up to our passions so that we suffer the natural consequences of our actions. Yesterday, we saw that even those outside the law of Moses have God's law written on their hearts, as it were. Today, we'll look at a somewhat curious section of the argument where Paul talks about circumcision. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas. For Jews, or rather Jewish males, circumcision has always been an outward sign of the covenant. It marks a person as belonging to God's household. And it is more than a sign of identity. It is a sign of obedience to the law. The problem, of course, is that even for those who keep the law are still, as Paul says, under the power of sin. That's where we pick up his argument today. He says, circumcision is indeed of value if you obey the law. But if you break the law, your circumcision has become uncircumcision. So if those who are uncircumcised keep the requirements of the law, will not their uncircumcision be regarded as circumcision? Then those who are physically uncircumcised but keep the law will condemn you that have the written code and circumcision, but break the law. For a person is not a Jew who is one outwardly, nor is true circumcision something external and physical. Rather, a person is a Jew who is one inwardly, and real circumcision is a matter of the heart. It is spiritual and not literal. Such a person receives praise not from others, but from God. It would be possible to conclude from what Paul says here that the law of Moses is unimportant, but that would not be true. And it would also be possible to conclude from his words that being Jewish is not worth anything, but that also would be a false conclusion. All he's trying to say here is that both those who keep the law of Moses and those who have the law written on their hearts, Gentiles, both fail to keep the law, and both are under the power of sin. This is an important point because it universalizes the human condition. We're all in the same boat, which is to say we all alike are under the power of sin, whether we keep the law or not. Paul seems to understand that one could draw false conclusions here by the way he continues. He asks, then what advantage has the Jew? Or what is the value of circumcision? After all, if we're all under the power of sin, what good is it to have been part of God's chosen people? And if circumcision doesn't ward off the effects of sin, what's the use? Here he answers his own questions. What is the advantage of the Jew, and what is the value of circumcision? Much in every way, he says. For in the first place, the Jews were entrusted with the oracles of God. What if some were unfaithful? Will their faithlessness nullify the faithfulness of God? By no means. Still, he says, Jews are really no better off than anyone else because sin is universal. The Jews may be the custodians of the law, but that doesn't alter the fact that they are in the same boat as everyone else. Now, if that sounds highly judgmental, it's really not. It's simply an observation of the human condition. Where it really sounds bad is in his insistence that all who are under the power of sin deserve the wrath of God. Reading between the lines, that means all of us. If you're about to give up hope at this stage, just wait. Tomorrow we'll see how Paul closes the loop on all of this and brings hope up in an apparently hopeless situation. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do, this day and in all the days ahead.